Welcome, everybody, to Illuminating Stories of the Market number 3. In our first Stories of the Market, we learned about stocks, and you can see the video either on a blog post or at our YouTube channel. We also saw, gulp, that some asset classes could be negative over 10 plus years. We also saw some market attributes that could generate returns exceeding the S&P 500, specifically small cap stocks and small value cap stocks. So today we're going to take a look at safer asset classes because no one likes to have a down year. So here we go. So if I take some pieces of that matrix chart that we've been looking at and I focus in on shorter time periods, the market can be down for a number of years. And we saw, of course, the 1929 period right here, where it was 14 years, but there was a lot of red around that area and some red in 37 and you can see in the early 2000s and so forth. So we don't like that red. So how can we avoid that red? Because, that's not fun. Well, let's look at the safest investment in the world, 1 month US Treasury bills. And if you look at the matrix chart, of course, I know you can't read the numbers, but you can see there's no red areas on there at all. It's all black numbers, not a smidge of red. Well, that's great because I do not like red, at least when it comes to charts where red represents losing money. So if we go down to that bottom left-hand corner of the 1 month US Treasury, so we can read the numbers here, and we go down here, we see that the return, it's very stable. Look, there's not much variance like we've seen with the stocks, and 3.3% annualized from 1926 through 2019. But 3.3% is a low return. So this is a time that we need to talk about inflation and what's called real returns. So if we look at the same 1 month US Treasury bill, but now we're looking at real returns, not direct returns. And when we do that, we see there's large areas of this chart that are red. You can see it, even though you can't read the numbers, you can see the red areas here on the chart. And we have a couple of C's of red in there, and that's worse than what we saw for stocks. So what's up with that? Well, the real returns are the return above and beyond inflation. It turns out inflation is somewhere in that 3%, or 3 to 4% range. And so basically it means that 1 month US Treasuries at best keep up with and maybe some at times slightly exceed inflation, but basically are in the same return area as inflation. And so that means you're not making any gains, because what that means is that the purchasing power of your money is staying even. It's not growing. Your purchasing power is not growing. And that's why stocks are so powerful. So now we're going back to the good old S&P 500, but this is a different chart. This is real returns of the S&P 500, the returns above and beyond inflation. And we look at that, and now we see down here at the bottom that the 1926 through 2019 number is 7.1%. So we're actually gaining ground against inflation because our actual return of 10% exceeds inflation, such that we get a 7.1% return above and beyond inflation. So we're making gains against purchasing power. We're increasing our wealth by increasing our purchasing power. If our purchasing power just stays flat, we're not really gaining wealth. So what about bonds and stocks? So let's talk about that. Now remember, we talked about the premium, in other words, the extra return that you can get in small stocks versus large stocks, and value stocks versus growth stocks. Well, the most basic premium of all is the premium of stocks over bonds. And that's the largest premium. So if we use US Treasuries, US 1 month Treasuries as our bond comparison, then our return above and beyond of stocks over bonds is about, stocks minus bonds, the difference is about 6 to 7% annually long term. So let's take a look at that. Now, this is a special time period where the S&P 500 had a particularly difficult time. The returns were not where they normally were. And it started off the first year, this is 1966, beginning of 66 through the end of 82. and the first year was real bad at minus 10%. But if you look at that, over that 17 years down here at the bottom, the SP 500 actually fell short of the 1-month U.S. Treasury annualized return over that 17-year period by 0.2%. So there was no stock versus bond premium for 17 years. So maybe there is a place for bonds in our portfolio. So now let's add bonds to this comparison during the last decade. We've already looked at large. We compared that to small value. Now let's add a global bond index in here. Same time period, 1/1/2000 through 12/31/2009. And in that 10-year period, you had a 5.8% annualized return. Yeah, it's only about half of the small value, but it's not negative. And that's really a decent number, especially compared to the SP 500. So yeah, bonds can make a lot of sense. And there's something called rebalancing that we may have an episode on here in the future, which does real well with bonds, because quite often bonds go the opposite direction of stocks. So it's pretty nice when you can have a 5.8% return when the large caps were down during that 10-year period. So what do we learn in today's session, number 3? We learned that real returns are the returns beyond inflation that grow the purchasing power of your assets. We learned that very conservative bonds have low returns, and their real returns are often negative. So they don't overcome inflation, or they at least are about even with it. And stocks overcome inflation and have positive real returns long term. So bonds are a good portfolio stabilizer, and they often move up when stocks go down. Not always, but a lot of times. So that is session number 3. Glad you were here, and I look forward to session number 4. Please go back if you haven't already and check out sessions 1 and 2, and have a great day. Bye-bye.